The transport ship Aurora docked at Nexus Prime with a soft hum that vibrated through the massive space station's metal corridors. Commander Zara stood at the observation deck, her thick gray skin reflecting the blue glow of the docking lights. As a Kratari warrior, she had seen many new recruits arrive over the years, but today brought something unusual. Today, Earth was sending its first representative to the Galactic Defense Corps Elite Training Program. The airlock opened with a sharp hiss, and various species emerged from the transport. Zara watched as tall Velen warriors stepped out first, their silver skin gleaming and their movements quick and precise. Behind them came a group of Drenari technicians, their large eyes scanning the station with obvious curiosity. Then came the Kratari reinforcements, walking with the confident steps that her people were known for throughout the galaxy. Finally, a small figure appeared at the back of the group. Zara leaned forward, wondering if this could possibly be the human representative. The being stood barely 6 feet tall, with pale skin and brown hair that seemed ordinary compared to the colorful appearances of other species. He carried a simple bag and looked around with wide eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "That cannot be the human warrior," muttered Lieutenant Cross, a fellow Kratari standing beside Zara. "He looks like he would break if you touched him too hard." Zara had to agree. The human appeared fragile next to the other species. His arms looked thin compared to Kratari strength, and his movements seemed slow compared to Velen speed. When he tried to lift his bag to match the pace of the other recruits, he struggled visibly. The bag was clearly designed for stronger species, and the human had to drag it rather than carry it properly. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," announced Captain Vex, the station's commanding officer. His deep voice echoed through the docking bay as all the new arrivals gathered in formation. "You have been selected from across the galaxy to join our most advanced training program. Each of you represents the finest your species has to offer." Zara watched the human during this speech. While other recruits stood at attention with military precision, the human seemed to sway slightly. The artificial gravity on Nexus Prime was set to accommodate the strongest species, and clearly the human was having trouble adjusting. His breathing appeared labored, and small drops of moisture appeared on his forehead. "State your name and species for the record," Captain Vex commanded, pointing to the first recruit. "Thane of Velos, Velen warrior class," came the first response, delivered with pride. "Doke of Kratari Prime, heavy assault specialist," announced a massive Kratari recruit. When the captain pointed to the human, there was a brief pause. "Ben of Earth, human," came the simple response. His voice was steady but quiet, and several recruits turned to look at him with curiosity. Many had never seen a human before. Captain Vex nodded and continued the orientation. "Your training will begin tomorrow. Today, you will be assigned quarters and given time to adjust to station conditions. The quartermaster will provide you with standard equipment and schedules." As the group moved through the station's corridors, Zara followed at a distance, observing how each species adapted to their new environment. The Velen warriors moved with their usual swift grace, already exploring the layout with quick glances. The Kratari recruits walked with confidence, their heavy steps echoing on the metal floors. The Drenari technicians examined every piece of equipment they passed, their analytical minds clearly working. The human named Ben moved differently. He walked slowly, not from laziness but because he seemed to be studying everything around him. When they passed a maintenance panel, he paused to look at it carefully. When they walked through the hydroponics bay, he stopped to examine the growing systems. Unlike the others who were focused on showing their strength or speed, Ben appeared to be learning. "He moves like he has never seen real technology before," observed Lieutenant Cross. "Are humans really so primitive?" Zara shrugged her massive shoulders. "Earth only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their military technology is probably centuries behind ours." The quartermaster, a efficient Drenari named Quinn, began distributing equipment to each recruit. Standard armor, communication devices, training weapons, and data tablets were handed out based on each species' requirements. When Ben's turn came, even the basic equipment seemed oversized for his frame. The armor hung loosely on his shoulders, and he had to adjust the straps multiple times to make it fit properly. "This is embarrassing to watch," whispered another Kratari officer. "Why did Earth even send him? Surely they have stronger representatives." During the equipment demonstration, the differences became even more obvious. Velen recruits handled the training weapons with natural skill, their reflexes allowing them to master the controls quickly. Kratari recruits lifted the heavy gear without effort, their strength making the equipment seem light. Even the Dranari, though physically smaller, showed impressive understanding of the technical systems. Ben struggled with almost everything. The training weapon was clearly designed for stronger hands, and he had to hold it with both hands where others used one. The armor's weight made his movements clumsy, and the communication device's controls seemed too complex for him to master quickly. Zara watched with growing disappointment. She had hoped Earth might bring something valuable to the Corps, but this human seemed completely unprepared for military service. "Tomorrow begins your evaluation period," announced Quinn. "After 1 week of basic training, those who qualify may attempt the Trial of Champions. This trial determines placement in our most elite units. Only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable warriors succeed." Several recruits immediately expressed interest in the trial. The Velen warriors seemed eager to prove their speed and skill. The Kratari were confident their strength would carry them through. Even some of the Dranari believed their technical knowledge would be valuable. Ben raised his hand slowly. "I would like to attempt the trial as well." The entire group turned to stare at him. Quinn blinked several times, clearly surprised. "Human Ben, the Trial of Champions is extremely difficult. Most recruits train for months before attempting it. Are you certain you understand what it involves?" "I understand it tests different types of warrior abilities," Ben replied calmly. "I would like the opportunity to participate." Zara exchanged glances with Lieutenant Cross. They both shook their heads in amazement. The human clearly did not understand what he was requesting. The Trial of Champions had defeated some of the galaxy's finest warriors. It required not just physical strength but strategic thinking, endurance, and the ability to adapt quickly to changing situations. Most species spent years preparing before they felt ready. "Very well," said Quinn, making a note on his data tablet. "Your request is recorded. However, I strongly suggest you focus on basic training first. The trial can be attempted at any time during your stay here." As the group dispersed to their quarters, Zara remained in the equipment bay, thinking about what she had witnessed. In her 20 years of military service, she had seen many confident recruits arrive at Nexus Prime. Some succeeded, others failed, but all of them had shown some obvious qualification for being there. This human Ben seemed to have no particular strengths at all. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to observe how Ben would handle his first night on the station. She followed discreetly as he made his way to the assigned quarters. The human housing section was in a quieter part of the station, with environmental controls adjusted for their weaker constitution. Ben's room was small but functional, with a bed, desk, and storage areas. Zara watched through the corridor's observation window as he unpacked his simple belongings. Unlike other recruits who spent their first evening exploring the station or socializing with their species mates, Ben sat at the desk and began reading. He had brought several books with him, actual printed books rather than digital tablets. Zara could not read the human writing, but she could see he was taking notes as he read. After an hour, he moved to his data tablet and began accessing the station's archives. He was not looking at entertainment or communication with home, but rather historical records of previous training programs and trial competitions. This behavior puzzled Zara. Most recruits spent their first night either resting or trying to impress others with their abilities. Ben seemed to be studying, as if he was preparing for an examination rather than military training. She wondered if this was some human cultural practice she did not understand. The next morning brought the first day of basic training. All recruits gathered in the main training hall, a large space with equipment designed to test various military skills. Combat simulations, physical conditioning stations, technical training areas, and strategic planning rooms were arranged throughout the facility. Instructor Vale, a veteran Velen warrior, addressed the group. Today we begin your evaluation. You will rotate through different training stations. Your performance will be recorded and analyzed. Those who show promise will advance to more specialized training. As training began, Zara positioned herself where she could observe all the recruits. The patterns she expected quickly emerged. Velen warriors excelled at speed-based challenges and precise movements. Kratari dominated strength-based exercises and direct combat scenarios. Drenari showed superior performance in technical problems and analytical tasks. Ben moved through the stations methodically, but his performance was consistently below average. In physical conditioning, he completed the minimum requirements but nothing more. In combat simulation, his reactions were too slow compared to other species. In technical challenges, he asked many questions and took longer to understand the systems. However, Zara noticed something interesting. While Ben performed poorly in each individual area, he never gave up. When he failed at a task, he would ask questions, try again, and gradually improve. Other recruits who excelled in their specialty areas often struggled when faced with unfamiliar challenges, but Ben seemed to approach everything with the same careful attention. By the end of the day, Ben ranked near the bottom in overall performance scores. Instructor Vale posted the results publicly, and Zara saw several recruits looking at Ben with obvious pity. The human had not quit, but he had clearly proven himself unsuited for elite military service. That evening, Zara made her decision. She would speak to Ben directly and suggest he consider a different career path. It would be kinder than allowing him to continue struggling toward an impossible goal. The trial of champions would destroy what little confidence he might have left, and there were other ways he could serve the galactic community without putting himself through such difficulty. She found him in the archives again, surrounded by books and data tablets, still studying as if his life depended on it. Part 1, 2000 words ka leko or interesting huna chia or third-person style ma lekni ha or simple basic English ka. Don't use any violated word. So please avoid any violated content. Don't use ... Commander Zara approached Ben in the archives, her heavy footsteps echoing in the quiet space. The human looked up from his stack of research materials, his eyes tired but alert. Around him were scattered reports from previous trial of champions, historical military strategies, and technical manuals about the station's systems. Human Ben, Zara said, settling her large frame into a chair across from him. I wanted to speak with you about your decision to enter the trial. Ben closed the book he was reading and gave her his full attention. Yes, Commander. Do you have advice for me? Zara had planned to suggest he reconsider, but something about his calm response made her pause. The trial begins tomorrow. Most recruits who attempt it have trained for months. You have been here only 1 week, and your scores in basic training are among the lowest recorded. That's true, Ben agreed without any sign of shame or anger. I'm not as strong as the Kratari or as fast as the Velen. My technical knowledge is limited compared to the Drenari. Then why do you still want to participate? This is not a matter of simple courage. The trial can be dangerous, and failure often means serious injury. Ben considered her question carefully before answering. Commander, may I ask you something? When your species first joined the Galactic Defense Corps, were they immediately successful? Zara frowned at the unexpected question. The Kratari proved themselves through strength and tactical ability. We earned our place through superior military performance. But that was after thousands of years of warfare on your home planet, correct? Your species evolved in a harsh environment where only the strongest survived. Your military traditions developed over centuries of conflict. Yes, that is accurate. What is your point? Ben leaned forward slightly. Humans are different. We didn't evolve for a single environment or specialize in one type of conflict. Earth has many different climates, many different challenges. We learned to adapt to whatever situation we faced. That adaptability is what I want to prove in the trial. Zara studied his face, looking for signs of overconfidence or delusion. Instead, she saw quiet determination in something else she couldn't identify. Adaptation alone will not help you survive the physical demands of the trial. Perhaps not, Ben admitted. But I've studied every previous trial on record. Success isn't just about being the strongest or fastest. It requires solving problems that no single specialization can handle alone. The next morning, 12 recruits gathered in the preparation area for the Trial of Champions. Captain Vex explained the rules to the assembled participants while officers and previous graduates watched from observation areas. The trial consists of 3 main challenges, Captain Vex announced. First is the endurance test, a cross-country navigation through hostile terrain. Second is the strategic challenge, where you must demonstrate tactical thinking and resource management. Third is the adaptability test, where you will face unexpected situations requiring creative solutions. Zara took her position in the observation booth, surrounded by other officers who had come to watch. Lieutenant Cross pointed toward the starting area where Ben stood among the other competitors. The human looked small next to the massive Kratari recruit Doak and seemed slow compared to the swift Velen warrior Thane. This should be over quickly, Cross muttered. The endurance test alone will eliminate him within the first hour. The first challenge began at dawn. All 12 participants were transported to the edge of a vast training ground that simulated hostile planetary conditions. The terrain included rocky hills, dense forests, muddy swamps, and stretches of desert sand. Each recruit was given basic supplies and a navigation device, then released to find their way to checkpoints scattered across a 50-kilometer course. As expected, the Velen warriors took an early lead, using their speed to cover ground quickly. The Kratari recruits followed a more direct path, using their strength to push through obstacles that forced others to take longer routes. The Drenari participants moved more carefully, analyzing the terrain and planning efficient paths. Ben started last and moved at what seemed like a painfully slow pace. While others rushed forward, he paused frequently to examine the landscape, check his navigation device, and study the patterns of wind and weather around him. Zara watched through remote sensors, expecting him to fall further and further behind. After 2 hours, something unexpected happened. The weather began to change rapidly, as it often did on this particular training ground. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and strong winds started blowing sand and debris across the desert sections. Most participants pushed forward harder, trying to complete the course before conditions became worse. Ben did something different. He found shelter behind a large rock formation and waited. Zara watched in confusion as precious time passed with the human sitting motionless while his competitors gained distance. "What is he doing?" asked Lieutenant Cross. "He's wasting valuable time." Then the sandstorm hit. Winds reached dangerous speeds, and visibility dropped to nearly zero. The lead participants found themselves trapped in the open, unable to see their navigation devices or find safe shelter. Emergency signals began activating as several recruits became lost in the chaos. Ben emerged from his shelter and began moving through the storm with surprising confidence. He had studied the wind patterns and positioned himself to use the storm's movement to his advantage. While others fought against the harsh conditions, he moved with them, covering ground more efficiently than anyone had managed during clear weather. More importantly, Ben began locating the stranded participants. Using his navigation device and environmental knowledge, he found Thane first, trapped in a small ravine where the wind had knocked him down. Instead of simply marking the location for rescue teams, Ben climbed down and helped the Velen warrior to safety. "That human is risking his own position to help competitors," observed Captain Vex, who had joined the observation booth. "Most recruits focus only on their own performance." Ben continued this pattern throughout the storm. He found 2 Drenari participants who had become separated from their equipment and guided them to shelter. He located a Kratari recruit who had injured himself trying to break through a stone barrier and provided medical assistance. Each time, Ben used techniques that none of the observers had seen before. Where did he learn those rescue procedures? Zara asked. They're not standard core training. According to his file, humans have extensive experience with natural disasters on their home planet, replied Captain Vex. They develop emergency response systems for situations that other species rarely encounter. When the storm cleared, Ben was not in first place, but he had successfully guided 7 other participants to safety and helped them continue the course. His own time suffered, but he had prevented multiple failures and possible injuries. The other recruits began looking at him differently, with something that resembled respect. The second challenge took place in a strategic simulation center. Each participant was given command of a simulated military unit and faced with a complex scenario involving resource management, terrain analysis, and tactical decision-making. They had to defend a space station from multiple attacking forces while managing limited supplies and personnel. Most participants chose direct approaches based on their species' traditional strengths. Velen warriors relied on speed and quick strikes. Kratari focused on heavy assault and strong defensive positions. Drenari emphasized technical superiority and detailed planning. Ben studied the scenario for a long time before making any moves. When he finally acted, his strategy seemed strange to the observers. Instead of engaging the attacking forces directly, he began what looked like a retreat. His simulated units fell back from forward positions, seemingly giving up territory without a fight. The human is surrendering, Lieutenant Cross said with disappointment. He doesn't understand military tactics at all. But Zara watched more carefully. Ben wasn't retreating randomly. He was drawing the enemy forces into specific areas, using the terrain to create choke points and ambush opportunities. His units moved in patterns that seemed to follow no traditional military doctrine, but they were clearly coordinated. As the simulation progressed, Ben's unconventional strategy began to work. The attacking forces, expecting direct resistance, found themselves confused by his indirect approach. They advanced into areas where Ben had positioned hidden defenses, and their superior numbers became a disadvantage in the narrow spaces he had chosen. He's using patience as a weapon, Zara realized aloud. Most species fight to win quickly, but he's fighting to make the enemy lose slowly. The final result showed Ben achieving victory with fewer losses than any other participant, despite having the same starting resources. His approach had been so different from normal military thinking that the simulation's designers had to review their scoring algorithms. During the debriefing session, Instructor Vale asked Ben to explain his tactical choices. Your strategy was unlike anything we have seen before. How did you develop this approach? Ben thought carefully before responding. On Earth, we learned that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to avoid fighting until your opponent makes a mistake. Patience and observation can be more powerful than strength or speed, if you understand how to use them. As the day ended and participants prepared for the final challenge, Zara found herself reconsidering everything she thought she knew about human capabilities. Ben hadn't dominated through superior physical abilities or advanced technology. Instead, he had shown ways of thinking and problem-solving that were completely new to her. She realized that she might have been measuring Ben against the wrong standards. Perhaps human strength wasn't meant to be compared directly with other species' specializations. Perhaps it was something entirely different, something that could complement and enhance the abilities that already existed in the core. The final challenge would begin tomorrow, and Zara found herself genuinely curious to see what other surprises this seemingly ordinary human might reveal. The final day of the Trial of Champions began with an unexpected announcement. Captain Vex gathered all participants in the main briefing room, his expression more serious than usual. Behind him, emergency lights flashed on the station's status boards, and the sound of urgent communications filled the air. The adaptability challenge was scheduled to be a simulation, Captain Vex explained. However, Nexus Prime is currently experiencing a genuine crisis. Multiple systems throughout the station are failing simultaneously. Rather than proceed with artificial tests, we will evaluate your performance during real emergency operations. Zara leaned forward in the observation area, concerned by this development. System failures on a space station could be extremely dangerous. The artificial gravity, life support, and structural integrity systems all depended on precise coordination. If too many components failed at once, thousands of lives could be at risk. Each participant will be assigned to a different section of the station, Captain Vex continued. You will work with existing crews to identify problems and implement solutions. Your performance will be evaluated based on effectiveness, leadership, and ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Ben raised his hand. Captain, will we be working independently or as part of teams? You will have access to station personnel and other participants as needed. The goal is to restore full operations as quickly as possible. Lives may depend on your success. Assignments were distributed rapidly. Doak, the massive Kratari recruit, was sent to the power generation sector where his strength might be needed for heavy repairs. Thane, the swift Velen warrior, was assigned to the communication hub where quick responses could prevent system cascades. Various other participants received assignments matching their obvious specializations. Ben was assigned to Coordination Central, the station's main command center. Zara was surprised by this choice, since the position typically required extensive experience with multiple ship systems. However, she realized that no other assignment would have made sense, since Ben had not shown particular strength in any specialized area. This should be interesting, Lieutenant Cross commented as they watched the participants disperse to their positions. The human will either prove himself completely useless or surprise us all. Zara followed Ben through the corridors toward Coordination Central, using security cameras to observe his progress. The human moved with the same careful attention he had shown throughout the trials, but now his pace was faster and his movements more confident. When he passed other station personnel rushing to emergency positions, he stopped briefly to ask questions about the problems they were facing. At Coordination Central, Ben was met by Chief Operator Finn, a veteran Drenari who had managed station operations for over a decade. The command center was in chaos, with multiple screens showing system failures throughout Nexus Prime. Red warning lights flashed continuously, and the sound of emergency alarms created a constant background noise. Human Ben reporting for assignment, Ben said calmly despite the obvious crisis around him. Chief Finn looked up from a console covered with urgent status reports. I don't have time to train a new recruit. The main computer network is experiencing cascading failures. Environmental controls are offline in 3 sectors. The transportation system has completely stopped working. We need experienced technicians, not beginners. What can I do to help? Ben asked, ignoring the dismissive tone. Finn gestured toward a secondary console. Monitor the emergency communications. If anyone reports immediate life-threatening situations, alert me immediately. Otherwise, stay out of the way. Ben took position at the communication station and began listening to reports from throughout the station. Zara watched as he quickly familiarized himself with the interface, asking brief questions to nearby operators when he encountered unfamiliar procedures. Within minutes, he was efficiently managing the flow of emergency calls and organizing them by priority and location. However, Ben was doing more than simply monitoring communications. He was analyzing the patterns of system failures and cross-referencing them with the station's layout and operational procedures. After 20 minutes of careful observation, he approached Chief Finn with a data tablet covered in notes and diagrams. Chief Finn, I think I've identified a pattern in the system failures. Finn barely looked up from his repairs. I don't have time for theories from someone who's been here for 20 minutes. The failures aren't random, Ben continued patiently. They're following the pathways of the secondary power distribution network. If my analysis is correct, the main problem isn't with individual systems. Something is wrong with the backup power routing protocols. This got Finn's attention. He looked at Ben's notes, his large eyes scanning the diagrams quickly. These calculations suggest that our backup systems are actually causing the failures rather than preventing them. But that would mean the problem is in the central programming, not the individual components. That's exactly what I think is happening, Ben agreed. Every time a primary system switches to backup power, it creates an overload somewhere else in the network. The failures are spreading because we're trying to fix them the wrong way. Finn studied the data more carefully, his analytical mind working through Ben's reasoning. If you're right, then all the repair teams are wasting time fixing symptoms instead of the actual cause. But testing this theory would require shutting down backup power to entire sections of the station. That's extremely dangerous. Ben nodded seriously. I understand the risk. But if we don't stop the cascade, we'll lose everything anyway. The pattern shows that critical life support systems will fail within the next hour. Chief Finn looked around the command center, where his staff was struggling to manage an increasing number of emergency reports. The traditional approach wasn't working, and the situation was becoming more desperate by the minute. Finally, he made his decision. Human Ben, I'm authorizing you to coordinate a station-wide diagnostic shutdown. But if this doesn't work, we could lose life support for thousands of people. Understood, Chief. I'll need to communicate with all the repair teams simultaneously and coordinate their actions precisely. Ben moved to the main communication system and opened channels to every section of the station. Zara listened as he began speaking to teams throughout Nexus Prime, explaining the situation in clear, simple language that every species could understand. This is Ben in Coordination Central. We need to perform a synchronized reset of all backup power systems. I know this seems dangerous, but the current failures are caused by conflicts between primary and secondary power networks. Responses came back immediately, mostly expressing concern or confusion. Doak's voice came through from the power generation sector. Human Ben, shutting down backup power could cause complete system collapse. Are you certain about this plan? I'm not certain, Ben replied honestly. But I'm certain that our current approach isn't working. The failure pattern shows we have about 45 minutes before life support systems begin shutting down automatically. Thane's voice joined the conversation from the communication hub. What do you need us to do? Ben outlined a precise sequence of actions, with each team responsible for specific components and timing. The plan required perfect coordination across dozens of different sections, with no room for error. Most importantly, it required every participant to trust Ben's analysis and follow his instructions exactly. On my signal, all teams will disconnect backup power simultaneously. We'll wait exactly 30 seconds, then reconnect everything in a specific sequence. If I'm wrong, we'll have 30 seconds to restore emergency power before serious damage occurs. Zara watched the coordination effort with growing amazement. Ben was managing teams of specialists from multiple species, each with their own expertise and communication styles. He spoke to Kratari engineers about power loads, Velen technicians about network timing, and Drenari analysts about system diagnostics. Somehow, he found ways to communicate effectively with all of them. Beginning countdown, Ben announced. All teams report ready status. One by one, confirmations came in from every section of the station. Ben had somehow convinced dozens of experienced professionals to trust a plan developed by someone they had considered incompetent just days earlier. Disconnect backup power in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now. Throughout Nexus Prime, emergency lighting dimmed as backup systems shut down simultaneously. For 30 seconds, the station operated on primary power alone, with no safety net if anything went wrong. In the command center, everyone held their breath as status monitors showed systems throughout the station going offline. Reconnecting in sequence, Ben announced. Power generation first, life support second, environmental controls third. As each system came back online, the cascade of failures stopped. One by one, the red warning lights changed to green. Emergency alarms fell silent throughout the station. Within 5 minutes, every system was operating normally for the first time in hours. Chief Finn stared at his monitors in disbelief. All systems show normal operation. How did you know that would work? Ben wiped sweat from his forehead before answering. On Earth, We deal with complex system failures regularly. Our technology isn't as advanced as yours, so we learn to find creative solutions when things go wrong. Sometimes the best way to fix something is to turn it off and start over. Captain Vex entered the command center as normal operations resumed throughout the station. He had been monitoring the crisis from the bridge, and his expression showed both relief and curiosity. Human Ben, your coordination of the emergency response was remarkable. How did you manage to convince experienced professionals to follow such an unconventional plan? I listened to what they told me about their specializations, then found ways to connect their expertise to the overall problem. Each species is excellent at what they do, but sometimes you need someone to help them work together. Zara realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. Ben hadn't solved the crisis through superior strength, speed, or technical knowledge. Instead, he had demonstrated an entirely different kind of ability, the power to understand, coordinate, and inspire others to work beyond their normal capabilities. Over the following days, as reports of the trial results were compiled, Ben's performance became the subject of intense discussion throughout the Corps. He had not achieved the highest individual scores in any single category, but his overall effectiveness had been extraordinary. More importantly, his presence had improved the performance of every team he worked with. Zara requested a private meeting with Ben before the final evaluation results were announced. She found him in the archives again, but this time he was reading about human history rather than military strategy. Ben, I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I believed you were unsuited for military service. I was measuring you against standards that don't apply to your species. Ben looked up from his book with a slight smile. You weren't wrong about my physical limitations, Commander. I'll never be as strong as a Kratari or as fast as a Velen. But humans learn to survive by working together and adapting to change. Maybe that's valuable too. More than valuable, Zara replied. I want to offer you a position as strategic coordinator for multi-species operations. Your ability to integrate different capabilities and solve complex problems is exactly what the Corps needs. Ben closed his book and stood up. I would be honored to serve in that capacity, Commander. As Zara walked away from their meeting, she reflected on what she had learned. Human warriors were not defined by physical dominance or technological superiority. Instead, they possessed something perhaps more valuable, the ability to adapt, inspire, and unite others in the face of any challenge. She had discovered that true strength came not from individual excellence, but from the power to bring out the best in everyone around them.